Some films were harmed in the making of this podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to the final installment of our 2017 October Fright Fest. You are listening to For Your Consideration. I'm your host, Mike Josic.
And I'm Dustin Friesenan.
Thanks for joining us. So, as I just stated, this is the fourth and final installment of our October Fright Fest Spooktacular for 2017. We have been comparing foreign horror films with their Hollywood American remakes.
Which is always a super interesting exercise that I think a lot of people should do, because it shows just how the tropes are done, how different countries take different themes, where focus lies, and you definitely notice a theme in how the Hollywood movies are remade.
I think you do. I mean, you hear often enough about North American films. I'm trying to be careful not to be too pointed about American films. But you often hear about how, you know, American films have to explain things, or how everybody has to look, you know, pretty, or there's a certain sort of way that they handle certain types of narratives. And by literally putting these movies back to back and comparing and contrasting them,
it's impossible to not see it.
It's
right there in your face, and it really affects how you watch other movies later on, I think, possibly.
I agree. We did a remake thing last year, and we didn't experience this kind of incongruity. I mean, You
do notice some differences in era as well, which is why I like to do those kind of remakes as well, back to back. But it's a completely different kind of difference that you'll see. Older versus newer, it'll have a lot more violence and sex nowadays, because horror movies have always been trying to sort of push that envelope. They're trying to shock, scare, titillate, trying to hit those buttons, and as we get used to more, it shows more. But going from country to country in the same era, it's now a cultural thing.
I think you pointed out in the Let the Right One In, Let Me In episode, when you were looking at the Swedish film, there were so many more normal-looking people in that movie.
I've always appreciated that about European films, that you'll have people who aren't Hollywood hot all the time. And even Hollywood ugly is still hot.
And the young people are actual young people, and the older people are actually older people. And and that is something that actually plays into the two films that we're doing today, which we'll probably touch on. I guess we might as well introduce the two films that are getting the compare and contrast treatment this week. Under the hot lamps, we have the 2008 French film Martyrs and its American remake in 2015. Well, it got a festival release, I think, in 2015, but it got a wide release in 2016, so...
It's usually written under 2015.
And the 2015 remake, also titled Martyrs.
AKA those films which show the dangers of sticking around the crime scene too long.
So many problems could have been solved.
The movies would have been about a half hour long.
So we'll roll credits on the first film and start talking about it. Martyrs was directed by Pascal Laugier. It was produced by Richard Grandpierre and Simon Trottier. It was written by Pascal Laugier. It starred Morjana Aloui and Mylène Jampanois. Music was by Seppuku Paradigm. Cinematography was by Stéphane Martin and Nathalie Moliavko-Vysotsky. It was edited by Sébastien Pranger. Distributed by Wild Bunch and released on the 3rd of September 2008 in France and October 18th, 2008 at Screamfest. It also had a Cannes release in May of 2008. It came out in 2008.
And we're actually having a hard time figuring out exactly what country to attribute this to, as it's more often referred to as a French-Canadian film as well. Either way, not a Hollywood film. But I wanted to get a bit of national pride in there, because you'll see how much we enjoy this movie in a bit.
I believe there was some French-Canadian funding for the film, but it was shopped around to the big studios in France. Initially, it got turned down by everybody, although it did get support by Canal Plus. Yeah, so In my opinion, this qualifies as a foreign film. Heck, even if it was French-Canadian, considering we're going with American Hollywood remakes, it would still qualify as a foreign film.
Still technically foreign, no matter what some people say.
So I guess in the tried and true tradition of the FYC style of commentary, I'm going to hand it over to Dustin to begin talking about Martyrs.
This is the second time I've seen this film, and the first time I saw it, I just sort of explained the basic plot to Mike and showed him the very end, and he was captivated. And honestly, like, I don't like torture porn. I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of these bad movies. August Underground, Touristas, Hostel, friggin'...
And that's how the discussion kind of started about this movie when you first introduced me to it, because I'm so not into torture porn. And you said, hey, there's this torture porn movie that kind of transcends the genre or the subgenre. And that's when you showed me that ending, and I went, wow, I need to watch this movie.
During the actual torture scenes, for the first time ever, I wasn't just rolling my eyes and bored and thinking that this is graphic and unnecessary. I was captivated. I actually wanted to know what it was building to, what it was going towards. They had built enough intrigue to make me actually care about the torture. Like, that is a first. That is, as you said, transcending the genre itself.
There were a lot of things narratively and structurally kind of building to that so that you weren't just feeling that the torture was exploitative. Like, the movie switches gears, I think, twice by that point, where you sort of think it's going in a certain direction, and then it's like, oh, no, that was just the beginning. That was the first act. And then they shift into an entirely kind of different type of movie. And to be fair, the torture itself...
It's not excessively brutal. It's not...
Oh, it's brutal.
It's brutal, but it's not excessively so. It's not...
It's not gory.
It's not the kind of thing you saw in Hostel where they're bringing out power tools and drilling in the people. And
like, she gets relentlessly beaten over an unspecified amount of time.
And they actually show snippets of the emotional torture that they were putting her through by not speaking to her, by having it random and she doesn't know what time of day it is, and even just the lack of comforts in the room that she's stuck in.
But they don't go for the jugular. They don't, waterboard her, and they don't stick things in her, and they don't... This isn't a bloodletting. There is a narrative reason, a thematic reason for what they're doing, and as you're watching, you're compelled by what's going on rather than... Well, no, you're repulsed by it too, but in a different way. It's not that repulsion that makes you want to turn it off and leave the room, because it's telling you a story.
It's an actual important part of the story, and the Mademoiselle, she explains before all the torture begins why it's going to happen, how they're doing it in a cold, calculated fashion for a specific reason. It's not just for some sicko to get their jollies, and you're trying to figure out what it's all leading to at that point. Because when it's somebody just getting their jollies, you know it's just there to shock and dismay you. But here, it's something entirely different. It has a reason. This is something that Salò, we feel, sort of fails to do.
Yeah, that was one of my first reactions after the film ended. I said, this is what Salò wanted to be, and I think entirely failed at, because this movie, it had something to say, and it went for the shocking. It showed you things that made you uncomfortable. It put you in situations that made you uncomfortable, and it made you really think about the themes and the ideas that were being presented, whereas Salò was just sort of soggy and anemic.
You were saying there that it wasn't enough torture and that you were sort of bored throughout it. I know I was bored throughout it.
And the irony there, too, is that I don't necessarily think that Martyrs has more torture.
I'd say it has far less.
And it's a visually far less complicated style of torture because they stick to some very basic sort of tried and true techniques. There's the isolation, there's the emotional trauma that she's going through, there's the physical trauma that she's going through, and you get that tragic loss of hope. And you never really got that in Salò, despite seeing the sodomy, despite the girl eating the nails, despite, all the other crap that was going on. There wasn't that sense of existential dread or loss of hope. It was just literally waiting until the running time of the movie ran out.
While in Martyrs, that dread, it was built up for the first hour of the movie. They show the psychological ramifications of what happened to Lucy.
Oh my God, that opening scene.
The opening scene, just her running from the place, like, tortured and screaming like that, that is gripping. That grabs you by the balls right out of the gate.
That girl's scream sent chills down my spine. It was so full of terror.
And then doing the sort of stock footage documentary on her to introduce their relationship, to introduce the psychological effects that happened to her. And then you have the home invasion, which is sort of the arc where this is the trauma that she experienced. She's seeing this creature that's attacking her all the time. She's tortured by what happened to her. She can't forget it, and she's hunted down this family and takes them out. And that's actually the bloodiest part of the movie.
That's true. And the creature it's played more for mystery and terror than it is for... The creature's not in your face. It's obscured for much of the first, 40 minutes of the movie?
And there's not a single jump scare in this movie, I don't think. The most shocking thing would be...
not a blatant jump scare.
Yeah, the guy opens the door, shotgun blast. That is the most surprising thing that happens, and it wasn't really a jump scare moment. You get the chance to see her for a fraction of a second before she fires it. So it's not really a jump scare.
Well, I think it's important the two characters see each other.
It's absolutely important for the narrative. She specifically says, I saw it in his eyes, and just declared, yep, this is it. That's them. And you doubt her this whole time because you know she's crazy. And Anna's doubting it as well, but wants to be there and support her. And things just go right to hell until you hit the second act where you're faced with the physical aspects of what happens. Lucy's down. She finds the other person. She sees that all this is real. And you see what happened to somebody who's been trapped there for much longer.
We're talking about Anna now, the other girl.
Yeah, Lucy dies, Anna's around, finds out that everything was real, and feels terrible about not believing Lucy. And
yeah, the movie does actually a really good job by introducing Anna, which is Lucy's friend. They do a really good job of, you have this very extreme, loud, visceral scene where Lucy goes through the house, killing the entire family. And there's even a moment of kind of doubt. You're not even really sure if it is Lucy, because there's a time jump. You go from the kids to this house invasion, but there's a little bit of doubt when she shoots the kids, and she feels bad for shooting the kids as well.
She's crying as she does it.
And then Anna comes into the story. It's a great actual scene. I love the throwing out of the sandwich. But Anna's not sure. Anna has always supported Lucy and has a strong connection to Lucy.
They hint that they're a couple in a couple of places. One being the phone call with her mom, where she leaves the phone off the hook, and her mom's going on about how you're with that girl again, aren't you? Like this, that, the other. And another where after everything, she's there sort of holding Lucy and goes in for a kiss, which Lucy backs away from. Like, what the hell are you doing?
This is not the time.
This is not the time.
And you're not sure if that relationship is unrequited. It's very possible that Anna has been in love with Lucy and Lucy hasn't given it back, or that could have literally...
is unable to give it back because she's so traumatized.
Could be unable, and it could also just be like, this is not the moment for a kiss. There's like way too much going on. And Lucy is also, I think, suspecting that Anna's not believing her.
Yeah.
And that brings us right back to the point that I was trying to say, which was by introducing Anna into the story, it brings into doubt what Lucy just did in the house. Lucy's saying, these are the people that did it to me. And Anna's going, are you sure? That was 12 years ago.
She's like, yeah, they've changed, but it's them.
Which
I can tell. I look at the eyes. Smell these hands. I can smell it.
Which, if you had no idea what this movie was going in, you would be like, oh, there's been a tonal shift. We've kind of subverted the whole
home invasion,
the revenge movie, and maybe she's the villain, maybe she's the crazy one. And then, as you said, after Lucy dies, basically killed by her own trauma,
she flat out kills herself in a very powerful scene.
Anna is left in a situation where she kind of by accident, no, quite literally by accident, discovers something's amiss in the house, and then she does a little bit of exploring, and she finds the person who essentially replaced Lucy down in the basement martyr cave. I don't know what else to call it. Which then takes you into a whole different segment of the movie, which has its own moments that just fill you with dread and unease. And there's all of this emotional baggage that Anna is feeling because of her not quite believing Lucy, and now Lucy is dead and all of it was real.
And now she's trying to redeem herself by taking care of this person who's just so messed up. And it's brutally messed up.
And it's amazing how Pascal Laugier balanced the horror of what this person has gone through to the point where they're almost inhuman. The way Anna treats her is so tender. There's such a tenderness in those scenes and an emotionality in those scenes, and it's mixed with all of this dread and horror of what this character has gone through. Mind you, none of it which has been shown to you.
All you see are the results. It's all Anna knows about this as well. She's seen the psychological results. Now she's seeing the physical results.
Laugier holds back. I mean, he gives you enough visceral stuff to make you kind of like feel the power and feel, drawn in and invested. But from a narrative point of view, he holds back what these characters went through in the torturing to become these martyrs, which I think was brilliant for two reasons. First reason being, it's not exploitative. It's not there just for the sake of making you uncomfortable and grossing you out. And secondly, when Anna ends up stuck in the same situation that Lucy and this other girl were,
you feel that hopelessness and despair.
You've seen the effects of what this treatment has essentially had on these other people. You know how far it can go and how bad it can get.
And and she knows, that's all that's left for her.
And that's where the next tonal shift is. We're like, oh my God, this is just going to be despair for like the next 30 minutes. In a lot of ways it is, but again, the torture is not
excessive.
Yeah, I at no point do I feel there's exploitation in this movie. They give you a couple of breathers. It's very artfully done. It's amazing what you feel for Anna, because you know that Anna knows going into that room what's in store for her. And it's chilling.
And then you have her talking to Lucy in her head and letting go. You see the slow change in her as she just lets go of the pain and the fear, which is precisely what these people are trying to accomplish in doing this to her. She hits that point, which moves you into the conclusion of the film, where she is skinned alive in order to achieve that transcendent state through pain and suffering, where she can see into the afterlife, according to their theory, which gets everybody in because she hits that state, and they know it, they recognize it. They talk about it when they get all these rich old people together, and they say, we've achieved this state 4 times, and this is the first time they've come back to talk about it.
And I think it's important to note as well that while these people are very clearly the villains, they don't explain a lot about them. They give you just enough to know what their motivations are and why they're doing what they're doing, and also to explain to the audience, sort of what to expect through their motivations. But these are not mustache-twirling villains. Even getting away from the whole, we must approach this in a cold, calculated sort of way, there is something they're questing.
They're effectively scientists to an extent, seeking truth.
And, as much as what they're doing is wrong, it's not an indiscriminate thing. It's not something where it's like, oh, we're just going to torture everybody because it's fun. They don't delight in the torture. It's a means to an end. I mean, that's where some of the sort of horror, I think, plays in as well.
And it's also where you can compare it to Sallow, where you've got these rich businessmen who organize all these people to torture for their own philosophical reasons. These people are doing much the same.
Now, considering we've compared this movie to Sallow several times, I feel it's only fair to bring in the movie we're supposed to be comparing it to, which is the American remake of Martyrs. Actually, it's also worth noting this is the only film that was remade that maintained the original title. We had Quarantine, we had Let Me In, we had The Uninvited, which were all name changes.
But Martyrs they stuck with.
And Martyrs was directed by Kevin Getz and Michael Getz. It was produced by Peter Safran and Jason Blum, written by Mark L. Smith. It starred Troyan Belisario, Bailey Noble, and Kate Burton. Music was by Evan Goldman. Cinematography was by Sean O'Day. It was edited by Jake York, distributed by Anchor Bay Films, and released on October 9th, 2015 at the Sitges Film Festival, and a wide release. Actually, I don't know if this film ever got a wide release. A theatrical release on January 22nd, 2016.
And pretty much everything we've said about Martyrs, the original, they did wrong in the remake.
My favorite thing about this movie is something that Dustin and I talked about after watching it, which was The original Martyrs was so divisive. You go to any aggregator, critics are all over the place on this movie. Even the ones who like it don't agree on what's good about it. It has, I think, a 7.1 on IMDb, but it's like a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. The American Martyrs?
They did what the French Martyrs could not do. They got everyone to agree. And everyone agreed that it was crap.
This is a terrible film.
If you've seen any generic torture porn, this is effectively another one.
The filmmakers said they wanted to focus on the relationship and the friendship between the girls.
Which is hilarious because I actually felt that they were less friends, they were less close than they were in the original. In the original, I was feeling the love in the relationship. In the remake, I felt that Anna was afraid of Lucy for most of it and was pretty much trying to rear her in and not get herself killed at the same time.
And the movie is, I think you said it was 15 minutes shorter than the original?
And you came in and asked, really? And I said, well, if you've got nothing to say.
This movie is kind of like the bullet points version of the original Martyrs, where people have said it's a shot-for-shot remake. It is not.
I don't know what the hell movie those people were watching, but they watched it wrong.
They took a lot of the things that are in the original Martyrs, but they left out all of the things that gave those moments meaning. They play up the spooky. A comment that I made watching the original Martyrs, I turned to Dustin and I said, after the first experience with the creature or the presence that Lucy feels in the orphanage or children's hospital, I can't remember what it was specifically, I said, if the American version doesn't show this creature, with her gnarly face all up in Lucy's grill, the first time we see her, I will eat my hat. And and that happened. The first time you see the creature, it's this ugly face going, raw. And
super jump scare.
So tacky and predictable, and they do a lot of tell, not show. They do a lot of things that stylistically are trying to, I think, make the movie look cooler. Like in the original film in the warehouse where Lucy was tortured, she was just chained to a chair in an abandoned warehouse or factory in an abandoned industrial area where no one would go. In this one, it was also a warehouse, but there was this white lit curtained,
those yellow dingy sort of drapes you'll have in a abattoir or slaughterhouse, just because.
Yeah, it serves no purpose other than just to look somewhat visually interesting. And one of the most offensive. Oh wow. Okay, so no, you're going to jump in on this. In the original Martyrs, we get introduced to the family, and the mother is outside cleaning out a pipe because something has clogged the pipe and there's water pressure problems. And the dad is inside making breakfast with the kids.
And then they're all razzing each other, having fun, and they eventually call the mom in who's playing around with the mouse that she found. And you don't really know what's going on, what this has to do with anything at this point.
And it's a fairly extended dialogue scene where you just sort of see this family, and it puts you in a sense of, by the time Lucy comes in and starts shooting people, you have this comfort level with how normal this family is. In the remake, not only is the mother inside making breakfast and the father is outside
doing the man's work,
digging in the hole. But yeah, Lucy comes in and just starts shooting everybody. The son.
The only dialogue they have prior to that is pretty much somebody saying that the son has to go downstairs and do the thing. And he's like, do I have to? Isn't it her turn? So they implicate the children. The children were never implicated in the original. You have no idea.
They may have been. They may not have been. So the children are implicated. Instead of the mom being the person that was, out digging in the hole in the backyard. And as is revealed, the primary person that Lucy remembers as a result of the smell on her hands, she says, every day I remember that smell from being fed.
Now it's on the man's hands.
It's all on the man. When he's lying there dead, and Lucy is talking to Anna, and she's like, I know that smell, and I know that face, and it was all on the dad. They made everything about the dad, implicated the kids, and it was so repugnant to me to see the subversion of that.
Women can be torturers too. #feminism.
It just felt so wrong. It felt so wrong. It was sort of the cheap and easy way to go, unnecessary. And Lucy had like a sawed-off shotgun instead of like the big shotgun that she had in Martyrs, maybe because it was cooler, maybe because it didn't look as awkward. And that was one of the beautiful things about Laugier's Martyrs, is that when Lucy comes in with that shotgun, it looks odd to have Lucy wielding this shotgun. And
one thing you commented on was the ammo. She shot one barrel, shot the other barrel, reloaded, and went about, and it was like they were counting the bullets, whereas in the new one, there's just bullets everywhere that you never see.
Oh man, the attention to detail in Laugier's Martyrs, when you first see in a flashback Lucy escaping from her original entrapment.
Confinement?
She's been sitting in a chair. She manages to get out of her chains, and she gets...
in a reasonable way, not just like shaking them like they did in the remake.
She gets out of the chair and she falls because her legs are weak. She brings her legs up and she rubs them to get the blood flow going. And then she runs away. And
but she's hobbling.
She's hobbling. She's walking weird because her legs are kind of fucked up. And the ammo and the scene where Anna goes down into the hatch where she takes the keys with her. Because
Mike
you have no idea.
Shut up about these keys.
She has no idea what she's going to experience down there. She doesn't know if she's going to need the key to get back up or if she's going to find something down there where she's going to need the key again.
But if you got a key ring with 12 keys on it and you're going into effectively a secret dungeon, maybe it's useful. And guess what they left upstairs in the remake?
And that's not to say that, taking the keychain with her would have changed the way the movie played out. Because it really didn't. But it was just a minor detail that a person would probably do. It just added this depth and realism.
The one thing, though, that both movies failed at when it came to realism. So
I'm not as hard on this.
You're on this too, original Martyrs. The first shot that Lucy does with the shotgun when she shoots the dad flies back like 7,000 feet, just hit by a rocket into the wall, and Lucy just steps right in. That is not how force works. That is shenanigans. That is the one thing that the original failed on, so the remake decided to fail on it too.
It was definitely played for effect, and I choose to ignore it. And I also want to qualify, this isn't just a mean-spirited, we're picking on this movie because, you shouldn't remake a movie that we really liked. And both of us really like Laugier's Martyrs.
You look at the other 3 reviews that we've done this month, we actually have no real problem with the American remakes as an individual film.
We were disappointed in a contrasting way to the original.
But they're generally serviceable, middle-of-the-road, scary movies. I'd watch them again, and I'd have other people watch them. But this one is honestly bad.
This is a bad movie. I just wanted to qualify that before rolling into, yet another thing that I think this movie did horribly wrong. Lucy survives.
You completely lose the extremely emotional scene where Anna's there with Lucy and the guilt that she feels that she was wrong about all this and the isolation that she feels.
Lucy has to die not only for Anna to feel the guilt, to feel the loss, and to feel it even more acutely when she discovers that Lucy wasn't lying. It's what kind of keeps her in the house, but it's also what provides the isolation that you feel and the loss of hope at the end of the last act of the film. By keeping Lucy alive in this film,
they basically have more victims, and they have a minimum of 5.
They rob it of all emotional and thematic oomph. You mentioned the 5 people. They go downstairs, they find a little girl who looks like she was basically out playing in the dirt and got lost or something. She does not look like anything bad has happened because you can't do anything bad to a kid.
Which is why they have to get some other older people that they can torture and or kill and or burn alive.
There's 2 more of them down there. So Lucy survives, Anna's alive, this little kid Sam is alive. They all look pretty healthy, pretty hardy.
They're all wearing mascara and have nice hair.
They all have long, nice brown hair. They all look clean. And even the one that sort of comes out that we find, and the one that they burned, still looked pretty healthy. They didn't look like they were having a hard time.
Lucy, who is supposedly cut up, beaten, tortured with a drill, and then had her back skinned, only her back this time, she looks pretty clean and presentable. A little bit of blood coming out of the mouth is about it.
Yeah, and while they don't actually show you what they do with the drill, they show a drill, you hear screaming, there's some blood, and it's like, I think at the time you were like, and here we are in hostile territory.
Absolutely, it was hostile.
It had nothing to do with the original story.
In fact, they repeatedly say that Lucy's the one. We know Lucy is the one. So why are you burning this other girl alive? Just do it to Lucy and stop killing people.
They make them sound like superheroes, like they have a gift. And there you go. Okay, we're bringing in the villains of this piece in.
Of which there are so many.
So many, and mustache twirling, and diabolical.
They go in and they specifically berate them
and they're like
as
a
they
cult.
start the torture. 100% they're like a cult. Religion becomes a huge thing in this one.
In the first film, the Mademoiselle actually specifically states to Anna that they took religion out of it. This has nothing to do with religion.
She says, look at these pictures, look at this martyr, look at this martyr, look at this martyr. You look at those eyes and you say that a martyr is a religious thing? Bullshit. In this one, it super is. Now, they bring up non-stop symbolism. Even at the beginning, they have the nuns that show up all over the place to talk to Anna and Lucy. They never did in the original. In the original, it was all flashback, just a doctor talking on a video. They have a priest do a complete ceremony. They chain Lucy up on a friggin' crucifix. Now, I did a little bit of research, and apparently the crucifix comes from this religion you might not have heard of called Christianity. In Christianity, they do have this belief of the afterlife called heaven. So if you're Christian, you probably believe in this heaven thing, so you don't need to go around torturing people to figure out if there's an afterlife. In fact, it turns out that killing people kind of gets you kicked out. So I feel that maybe the religious aspect was done a little wrong.
And there are so many things that are so ham-fisted. The scene where Anna hides the gun under the couch, and you just know that she's going to find her way back in.
No one's going to look for it or clean up.
She's going to get this gun. She's going to run around shooting people. Oh, man, you flipped out when they tried to bury her in the hole. And she crawls into that pipe, and you're like, no, she's not crawling in that pipe.
There's a whole huge drainage pipe. It's big enough to damn near sit up in. Why would you do that? Why would you try to bury someone alive in a place where they have an escape?
Yeah, why wouldn't they kill her, then throw her into the hole?
It makes no sense whatsoever, but it's just so that she lives, so that she can go on the shooting spree. And she's killing a lot of people in these tunnels. She can hear Lucy screaming while she's underground, first off, like a block away. But all these people can't hear her constantly firing off a shotgun right in the next room in the hallway. There's a friggin' janitor there that she shoots. How many people are there?
Okay, in the first film, I mean, we have such a spoiler-filled show, I don't think anybody watching this needs an explanation of the first film, but you have this family who takes on the role of the previous family in the keeping and the torturing of the martyr, or potential martyr. And, you know, it's just like the daily routine. The guy goes down, he beats her, doesn't say a word, goes back upstairs. They're living their life. There's a certain amount of time that's passed, and it's just them. This organization of people only exists at the ending as the group comes together to find out what it is that is like the secret of the universe. In this film, there's a fucking janitor in the basement. Like,
where were they all when the original family was there? Were they just out vacationing?
They're all just
hanging
gone for the
out
day? At the house. There's 5 girls in the basement being potentially tortured or about to be tortured. Yeah, there's a surgeon who does the skinning. It was done by the guy who performed the beatings.
And you see the skinning. Like, that's a very big difference here when we're talking about how graphic something is. The skinning, you see them cutting up her back slowly and then pulling the whole thing off in the remake. In the original, you see him grab the scalpel, cut off her clothing, then it just shows her face as he cuts in. She's not screaming. At this point, she's already given up. At this point, she's let go. And it becomes an emotional scene. It becomes an artistic scene. It becomes validated, damn near.
I also think it's important that the person who was doing the skinning in the original film is the same person who was doing the beating. and the torturing. It's like it was their responsibility to bring this girl to martyrdom. And they took it very seriously. And it was, as far as their kind of group was concerned, like I think this was probably...
one of many.
This probably wasn't the only one all over the world, but in a weird way, like I hate to use the word sacred, but I feel like the people who were tasked with doing this sort of took it as like a sacred responsibility.
I would agree entirely, because after she was skinned, they treated her with such reverence.
And this group, having the different guy doing the skinning, and there's a priest there at the end, and the mademoiselle, and this secret underground lair, like it all just feels so impersonal and so cheesy. It's like one of the latter Halloween sequels. I guess I think we're starting to push some time here, so let's just bring this to the end, even though I'd like to talk about some of the relationship stuff between Anna and Lucy that was flubbed in this movie.
Honestly, let's talk about it. We'll cut it out, special version of it, extended cut.
Okay. So another thing that really bothered me was it's that whole show don't tell thing. Like you said, you felt that the relationship was there between Lucy and Anna in the original film. Part of what gave you that sense was after Lucy commits this massacre, she kills his family, Anna calms her down and puts her to bed upstairs while she goes and clears the bodies. She's taking care of things for Lucy. She's dragging these bodies out in the rain. This reminds me of something else I want to talk about. She's dragging bodies outside in the rain. She's dumping them in the hole. She's doing this for Lucy. This tells you the dedication and the obligation. You feel that there's a connection, that this person is involving themselves in this and is in it to the end.
Whereas in the remake, Lucy threatens her into doing it, and Anna is terrified as she's forced to. That's supposed to be enhancing their relationship?
And there's the line where... it's a line taken from the original where Lucy says, "You don't believe me. You think I'm just as crazy as the doctors." And
Lucy does snap in the original and go after her a little bit.
But mixed in with that, Lucy goes, "Are you still going to love me?" or something like that, which just felt so... And I said, if one of these characters says to the other one, "I love you," I was going to get up and walk away. This was just not something that belonged in this movie.
There were so many moments when I turned around just to look at Mike's angry face, because I knew.
And touching on the existent or non-existent love story, that actually brings us into the sexuality of the films. Here you have a movie that's all about torturing girls. They're very specific about it having to be girls.
In the original Martyrs, they explain it, that they've done children, they've done old people, men, women, but it seemed that young women were most prone. So they're just working statistics, cold and calculated. Not explained in the remake.
There's just 5 girls being captured and tortured and abused.
That week, that we know of.
And there was... I mentioned to Dustin, because so much of what we've experienced in this comparing and contrasting is either a slightly higher sexualization in the American remake or...
the addition where none was before.
Or a hypersexualization. There was a little bit of that here, too. I mean, the original Martyrs has 2 young, attractive women. One of them is even wearing, like, a white tank top, and I was expecting, like, oh, here we go, kind of like Record in Quarantine, where she's going to take off a jacket, and we're going to have blood all over the white tank top. She's dragging these bodies out in the rain.
There is no focus ever on any sort of sexual aspect. There's no, here's an ass shot.
Much like the torturing, the photography in the torturing is done in such a way where it doesn't emphasize it or do it in a way that's really tasteless. And I felt the same way in shooting the girls. They were all shot as people. And even if there was a scene, there's nudity in this movie.
There's lots of nudity in the movie. The hallucination is naked. The tortured person Anna finds is naked. She has her clothes cut off eventually, so she becomes naked. But none of it is sexualized.
There's no moment in this where you are ogling anybody in any way. And there's no opportunity where the filmmaker is putting you in the position of staring at some boobs or some ass. But in the remake, as we said before, like, everyone stays fairly pretty. They're a little, scuffed up with some face makeup or whatever, but everyone's still got their mascara. Their hair is still, pretty good.
As opposed to they chop it off violently in the original, which is part of torture. You're attacking someone's appearance,
their identity,
self-image, their identity.
Sorry, continue. No, that's a valid point. But, there's a few shots of Anna's butt climbing and descending on ladders.
Lucy changing at some point where she's wearing the tight little
She's
black
got the
underwear.
black underwear and, yeah, the long, sexy back. You don't actually see... There's no nudity in Martyrs, the 2015 Martyrs, but it's still a more sexualized movie.
100%.
And it's frustrating. It's frustrating and distracting.
Though it is interesting on a filmmaking note that you can have nudity in a non-sexualized manner and have no nudity in a sexualized manner with the same general themes, just on how you shoot something.
Well, let's be fair. Schindler's List has nudity in it, but when it's a bunch of naked women in a gas chamber, you're not like getting aroused by this. This isn't like the opening scenes of Whiteout, where you know that Kate Beckinsale is going to be in a parka and snow pants for 95% of the movie, so you have to have a sexy shower scene at the beginning. Just so that people are like, okay, this is a sexy woman. We got our sexy stuff. Now let's go on to the story.
One of the things that they said was so hard about the acting in the first one is keeping the girls sort of crying the whole time. They are super emotional. You can feel like their despair, their pain, their anguish, their fear, everything. You can feel it in their acting all the time. And I knew right off the huff, seeing Lucy's reaction after shooting everyone, where she goes pretty much completely blank, like, well, that's done. Time to take out dinner's like an hour. Aw, man, I'm a little hungry. You don't feel anything. They'll have these random moments. The screaming. The difference in the screaming. I never noticed this before in a horror movie, but the high-pitched scream is so fake to me now. Watching the original Martyrs, it was never high-pitched. That's like you tickled a little girl, a 5-year-old girl sort of deal. That kind of high-pitched screaming. No, in the original, it was terror scream. It was pain scream. It was believable. In the remake, no, it's all wrong. And going back to the relationship, the cookie.
Oh, yeah. That's that whole show don't tell thing. They have to have her going, here, I stole you a cookie, and explain how she stole the cookie.
And then have her steal a few more cookies and get caught stealing a cookie. It happens like 4 times. It had a 15-minute less runtime, yet they had 10 more minutes at the beginning to show us and tell us exactly how they became friends.
Something that was sorely lacking. Sorely, I can't emphasize how sorely lacking this moment is in the remake. After Lucy kills everyone, she phones Anna, tells Anna to come get her, come help her, come see. Anna's in a car. She obviously brought Lucy to the house and has been waiting because Lucy was just going to spy on the family, see if it's the people, because she saw them in a newspaper article. And she's like, I think those are the people. So Anna, being supportive, takes Lucy out there. Lucy takes them all out with a shotgun, calls Anna, says, come and see. And while she's waiting, I think it was while she was waiting, she's on the floor shaking the mother and being like, why did you do this to me? Why did you do this to me? Like, she's having just this complete bugfuck sort of breakdown. It's a moment that tells you so much about her psychology and how she feels about what she's done and what she's been through. And they didn't have that at all. As bad as the family was in the original, because they did horrible things to her, you still kind of sympathize with them a little bit. There's still an uncertainty.
There was absolute uncertainty for the first 40-odd minutes.
In the remake, there's none of that sorrow or emotional unhinging or... Actually, I don't even think there was any crying in the Martyrs remake. Even the little kid who's like, I want to go home, I want my mom. Like, she's literally just saying, I want to go home, I want my mom.
So bland, like, I'm bored here, school not out yet.
That they couldn't even hire a kid who would cry.
They didn't even need a kid.
No, they didn't know.
It's supposed to just be Anna. As I said, it's just to have more victims. That is the whole purpose of that.
And having a little kid there is scarier, and having the little kid there probably reminds Anna and Lucy of their friendship as little girls, and it gives Anna the opportunity to save one little girl.
And it makes this movie not kosher because of the sheer amount of ham on those fists that they're pounding you with.
So if you have nothing else you want to talk about, I really want to talk about this ending.
The ending. The ending.
Oh, this ending.
And then this ending.
So this all builds up to this moment. Previous to this, I kind of felt like one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen on film was James Earl Jones as a locust in The Exorcist 2.
I can agree with that.
I'm kind of feeling like this ending for Martyrs trumps The Exorcist 2. There's a priest. You see the ritual Whereas in the original...
Sorry, I got to interrupt with the ritual.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
They have her crucified, and Anna says, bring her down, holding them at gunpoint. And he says, if we bring her down, she might die from the pain and the trauma. How the hell were you going to listen to her final words when she's 8 feet up in the air, you asshole?
Maybe they had a stepladder.
There was no stepladder there. You said that there was none. I looked.
There's like 50 people in this room. There's people watching this. There's a priest there who's presiding over everything, and Anna comes running in with a gun. I think 50 people probably could have taken her down. And beyond that, they puts the gun down.
They had warning because she was shooting a shotgun for 5 minutes before that,
and she puts the gun down
and looks away from it
and has a conversation
the final
with Lucy.
Words.
Lucy tells her what she saw. The priest goes, I overheard, and shoots himself.
The mademoiselle comes up to say, what did she say? What did she say?
Okay, let's clarify. In the first film, this is the ending that sold me on this movie. This is the ending that I found so compelling and drew me into the movie in the first place. Anna gets tortured. Anna achieves martyr status. Anna sees what's on the other side, and she's still conscious and speaking.
They even have a nice little art-filled thing where they zoom into her eye, and then there's just colors and lights, and you even get a feeling of transcendence there. They
call the group together, and they say, it's happening. They gather. The Mademoiselle shows up first. Anna tells the Mademoiselle, she whispers in her ear, whatever it is, all these people have been waiting to find out. And at this point, as Dustin mentioned earlier, she's being treated like a sacred object. Like she's been put through so much discomfort, and now they are treating her with nothing but respect and dignity and comfort, which also tonally just does a lot at this point in the movie. She tells the Mademoiselle what's going on. Everybody gathers, and the Mademoiselle is in the bathroom getting ready to come out. Well, quote, getting ready.
Sort of the opposite. She's taking off her eyelashes. She's taking off a headband sort of thing that she's wearing on her hair to show that she's got scraggly hair. You can see that she's taking off all pretenses and sort of returning to a more naturalistic state.
And everybody is waiting to find out what the big secret is.
There's a guy who comes up. Did she say it? Yes, she did. Was it clear? It is entirely clear and without any room for misinterpretation. And he's about to leave to get the message. She stops him. Wait. Can you imagine what the afterlife is? He says no. She says, keep doubting, and shoots herself.
Which is poignant and jarring and poetic and just loaded with so much.
Just the way they present it, it's so much to look into, to read into. Like, I'm tearing up now. Like, the emotional response was that powerful.
And in the remake, it's a circus. The priest overhears Lucy telling Anna the secret.
The Mademoiselle asks. Anna doesn't respond. The priest says, I heard it. Shoots himself in the head. Anna grabs the gun. The Mademoiselle asks, quick, just tell me, what did she say? And despite the fact that she heard this mystical thing that makes you kill yourself with whatever despair, with whatever knowledge you've gained, she instead quips back, why don't you tell me, and shoots the Mademoiselle. She becomes friggin' Bruce Willis in Die Hard. Time for a one-liner machine.
Then she joins Lucy on this crucifix thing that she's on, which is now lying down. They rehash a line from the beginning where someone says, where would you go if you got away from here? And the other one says, anywhere with you. So Lucy is transcending
by rolling her eyes into the back of her head.
Which is also very, Christian. She's on the cross. She's looking up. Her eyes kind of rolling back in her head. It's very Christ-like with the light shining down. Just barf.
Get those fists of ham away from me.
And that's nothing against Christianity. It's such a gross
misuse of it.
Yeah. There's nothing poetic in it. It's a cheap repurposing of a religious symbol to be a shortcut.
And it's completely invalidating what Christianity is actually about. Like I said, they have an afterlife. They know killing is bad. The priest knows suicide will get him in the hell. Why? Why would you bring Christianity into this?
And in the end, Anna is imagining the conversation. And I think she imagines Lucy saying, where would you go? And she's like, anywhere with you.
And they both martyr.
They both martyr.
She never went through, really anything. She was stabbed when she was shooting everybody. Got shot in the shoulder, I guess. Is everyone a martyr now? Is that how this goes?
It cheapens everything. there's nothing. This movie has nothing. Like you said, when you have nothing to say. It's just a travesty. It is honestly one of the worst films. Well, no, let me rephrase that. In comparison to the original Martyrs, the remake is honestly one of the worst films I've ever seen. Taken on its own, it's just a clunky, terrible, ham-fisted, cheap, underperforming horror film.
It's definitely the worst remake I've ever seen. I can say that bar none.
And considering Barbed Wire was a remake of Casablanca, Barbed Wire feels like Casablanca compared to this movie. Just a misfire. Just a total misfire. Makes me sad.
But if you ever feel like doing it just as an academic experiment just to see, you'll at least be presented with an excellent film.
In the form of the original. And then 87 minutes that you'll never get back.
I think our position is quite clear. This movie should be in lists. All the lists.
Pascal Logier's Martyrs is the kind of movie that makes you feel things. It makes you think. It's not one of those movies that entertains. It's one of those movies that it affects you.
I believe that the purpose of art is to express emotion, to create emotion, or to create thought. And this one creates thought and causes such emotion. It is a powerful film in that sense. In terms of transgressive art, this is the benchmark for transgressive art.
I honestly, Dustin wanted to roll into the remake almost immediately, and I told him I needed some space because I needed to process and absorb and appreciate what I'd seen in Logier's film before potentially causing harm watching a remake. And we did. We waited a couple of days and then we watched the remake, and I'm honestly so glad I did, because it allowed me to sit with that film and its ideas and what it made me feel and think about. And it's profound and provocative and emotional.
And it's just well directed and written. There's not a wasted scene.
Yeah, and on a purely technical level, this is a movie that changes sort of pace or style like 3 times. It subverts everything that you think it's going to be.
And it doesn't lose you while doing so.
It subverts several genres. It subverts the revenge film. It subverts the horror film. It subverts the torture porn subgenre. It's in a class. It's in a class all its own. And we checked after watching it if it was on the Sight and Sound list. And
they're all heathens. Heathens, I say.
I'm appalled. I'm absolutely appalled that this movie is not on the Sight and Sound list, because
The Sixth Sense is.
The Sixth Sense is. And, the reason we brought up Sallow earlier was because Sallow is.
And it's highly regarded on the Sight and Sound.
For what Sallow is supposed to do and communicate, and what it's supposed to represent in Pasolini's oeuvre, it's like, there's no reason this movie should not be there.
Definitely, if I was asked 10 films to be in the Sight and Sound list, this would be one of them.
So if we ever do a show where we want to give our own list, this is a sneak preview. We're both going to vote Martyrs. So that was, I don't know, kind of intense for me too, just talking about the movies.
This is probably there's not many people I would show it to, because it is still very powerful. The people who might appreciate it would have a hard time getting past a lot of the violence, a lot of the emotional themes. So this is one of the few opportunities I'll have to really just go on about it.
That was another thing we talked about after watching the movie, is like, I want people to experience this movie. I want people to have a similar experience to what I had, to hear what they think of the themes and the story and the characters. But it's not a movie that everybody can watch. It's not a movie that... I don't want to say it's not a movie that you want to subject to someone, because that sort of implies that it's bad in some way, but it's just, it does have content in it that...
There is a difficulty in watching it.
There is. And part of that difficulty adds to the power of watching it and what you feel and the meaning of everything. So, yeah, it's not for
everyone, but if you think it might be something that you could watch, by all means... You already know everything that's going to be happening, so you can prepare yourself. It's not the same as experiencing it.
And if you do watch the movie, we absolutely want to hear what you think about it. This is a movie that I think more people should be talking about.
Especially considering how divisive it already is.
I had no idea this movie existed until Dustin introduced me to it. And I think both of us are now working our way through Logier's body of work. So, yeah, definitely. We kind of saved the best and the worst for last. I was wanting to do a recap of the 8 films that we did, but this is already going to be a really long episode, so...
This is the longest episode we've ever done, actually.
Instead, I think we'll just call it a day here.
And we will see you for our final episode, where we will be recommending some movies that are currently on Netflix. The Canadian Netflix, because that's where we are.
It'll be our second annual anthology of horror, which will be an All Things Considered episode, like we did last year. And basically, Dustin and I pick 2 or 3 movies, much in the same way that we used to go to the video store before Halloween to have Halloween movies to watch.
And we'll give you our recommendations for a couple you might want to see.
And maybe you'll listen and maybe you won't. So if you want to get in touch with us or let us know what you think of Martyrs or any of the shows that we've done, feel free to contact us on any of our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like, share, follow, join, subscribe. We have a blog at WordPress, fycshow.wordpress.com. We're on iHeartRadio and Stitcher. We have a Patreon account. If you like what we're doing here, please support us. We've got a lot of different reward tiers. We think we have some cool stuff to offer, and your support will help us grow and expand the show. Also, just one more time, I want to encourage everybody to share the episodes with your friends and family. Word of mouth is the
backbone of our great country.
Word of mouth is really still the best way to, bring people into the fold. And if you like what we're doing here,
that is the best way to support us.
And if you get the show on iTunes, while you're there, rate and review the show. All of that helps promote the show in the podcast standings over at Apple. So thanks again for joining us. This has been quite an experience. 8 movies, only 1 disaster.
And at least 1 masterpiece.
Dustin, it's been a blast. I look forward to doing our Halloween roundup next week, and we hope to see all of you here next week to join us as well. We'll catch you at the end of the month. Hope you're having a great October.
I've been Dustin.
I've been Mike.
Take care.
We'll see you then. I went with a completely different thing there.
Yes, you did.
It felt good. It felt really good.